Hello and welcome to the second in our series of live KPI tree builds, showing how you can rapidly build a KPI tree on an interesting or important topic to you or your organization. So today's session is all about cash flow, which is a universally important concept both for profits and even for non-profits as well. So let's dig into the session today. I've got a little bit of background and housekeeping to take care of at the start. I was chatting to one of my black belts, Raphael. He's been trying out the tool that we're going to use today, and he commented on both how powerful it is and also how potentially dangerous it is. So I need to cover a little bit of ground before we start the build, just so you understand what we're doing here, what the risks are, and how we can mitigate those as well. So I've got three main objectives for today. I'm going to give you a quick KPI tree refresher. For those of you who watched the webinar yesterday, I apologize for the repetition, but it is important that people understand what a KPI tree is, what it will do and what it won't do. Next, I'm going to build the actual KPI tree itself. So today's topic is all about cash flow, and at the end of today, we should come out with a KPI tree for improving cash flow. Now, I'm going to pick a specific example organization because this approach works best when you have a particular target in mind, but many of the KPIs that we come up with will be relevant for any business, and I can show you how you can access the tool that we're using and fine-tune the KPI tree for your particular organization. And what we're going to do here is build a KPI tree that links our goals, our financial goals, with everyday measures, metrics, and shows how it all fits together and puts us in a brilliant place to choose the most important and relevant KPIs to deliver that outcome. Now, you may have come across KPI trees before, and I apologize if you have. If you haven't, I'm going to give you a 2-minute explainer on what a KPI tree is, so you've got a better understanding really of what we're doing here today. Now, the work that we're going to do is based on work done nearly 40 years ago, actually more than 40 years ago, by Kaplan and Norton. So you may have heard of balanced scorecards. They came up with this idea of linking strategy to what we measure. So thinking about the outcome when we measure something rather than just going out there and measuring random stuff. That's evolved over a number of iterations through strategy maps and then finally into KPI trees, which is something I created about 15 years ago to overcome some of the practical problems that strategy maps have. Great idea. They get really messy when you build them for real organizations. So what's a KPI tree? Well, a KPI tree is a visual way of taking a high level objective, breaking it down into smaller outcomes or results, and then finally finding the KPIs and metrics that will help deliver those outcomes or tell us if we're off track. Now, I'll give you a practical example. Being healthy is something that pretty much everyone on the planet thinks about at some time. It's a really important strategic objective. It's also not something you can put a single measure to. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to break it down. So for example, being healthy might involve regular aerobic exercise. It might involve strength training. It might involve sleeping well, and it would certainly involve eating well. However, eating well, again, is not something we can put a single number on. So we need to break it down a bit further. So it might be getting the right amount of vitamins and minerals. It might be eating a balance of fat, carbohydrate, and protein. And it will almost certainly involve managing calorie intake, making sure that we take on board the right amount of energy, not too much, not too little. Now, having got to this point, it then becomes really, really clear what we need to measure. So one of the KPIs for that would be calories consumed. There would be others. So, for example, my basal metabolic rate, so how much energy I burn just sitting here, and also how much energy I burn running around doing interesting things. The principle here is we take a top level strategic outcome, we break it down through a couple of layers of results, and at the end of it, the KPIs should naturally drop out. Now, it's very easy to explain. It's really easy to actually follow a KPI tree. It's quite a bit harder to build them. So one of the things that we've been doing at Made to Measure KPIs is building a tool to help you do that. And that's the tool that I'm going to be using today. There will be some details on how you can get this tool, but really today's focused on the challenge in hand, so maximising cash flow, and I'll share the KPI tree afterwards with anyone who's signed up to this webinar. So you'll be able to take a look at that tree and use it for your own purposes. So it scales. Obviously, being healthy, there's more than one KPI. It's not just calories consumed. Sometimes it scales a bit too well. And you can end up with hundreds of KPIs for a large organisation. Don't worry. This is a really common sort of anxiety that I get with clients. We're not going to suggest measuring hundreds of things. This is actually one step in a structured method. Now, today we're going to focus on strategy and what we call long listing, which is building a KPI tree. Now, we call it long listing because it creates a long list of KPIs. It is immediately followed by a method called short listing, where you prioritize based on practicality and accessibility of those KPIs, how easy it is to measure. Now, that's outside of the scope of today, but I just wanted to flag to you that there is a 7-step process of which KPI trees is one part. I'll be honest with you, KPI trees get people's attention, but each step of the ROCKS method is there for a reason. So, for example, step 2, engagement, super important. If you do not engage your team, if they are not participants in long listing, short listing, and definition, your KPI, your measurement process will fail because people do not engage in a process they haven't been involved in from an early stage. There's also step 5 around definition, step 6 around dashboard and report design using good visual principles, and step 7, which is all about implementation. You can find out more about this method, the ROCKS method, and also each of these steps on our website, made2measurekpis.com. But today isn't really about that. Today is focusing on strategic goals and building the KPI tree. Okay, so that is the intro. A quick heads up on KPI trees. Remember, we're going to generate a tree with far too many KPIs, and we are not suggesting you measure them all. So let's flip over to the tool and we'll start to build our tree. Okay, so here's the tool. We're in KPI Tree Studio, and I'll tell you a bit more about the tool at the end. And I've already set up the workspace for what we're doing today. Now, there's a few things to talk you through here. There is something called the Big Six, which is something I use a lot with my clients. When you get down to the crunch details with clients, most organizations have got fairly predictable outcomes that they're looking for, certainly commercial organizations. They're what I call the Big Six, and you'll see on the left-hand side, we've got it here. Now, if you use the Big Six, you can build multiple KPI trees and they will all fit together really, really nicely. So today's goal, cash flow. Why do we care about cash flow? Well, it's all about remaining solvent, and it helps our overall financial performance. So it's going to tie in with the first of the Big Six, which is run a profitable and solvent business. There are plenty of other things we're trying to do as an organization. Pretty much all businesses I work with are interested in growth. They legally have to meet environmental, social, and governance commitments. Depending on which part of the world you're in, it's becoming an increasingly complex and a sort of onerous task. We all need to stay legal and compliant, otherwise we're going to go out of business. There are a few businesses that choose not to, but most of the people I work with, well, all of them, are interested in staying legal and compliant. Innovation is really, really important. It's a big lever on profitability and growth, so that's up there in the Big Six. And managing risk. And by risk, we're talking about not just financial risk, it might be operational risk, it might be reputational risk, it might be conduct risk, it might be health and safety or environmental risk. That's a multi-dimension thing. Now, if we use the Big Six as our foundation, what we find is we might start with cash flow, but then we might start thinking about debtors, or we might start thinking about something completely different, but that has connections. And by using the Big Six, excuse me, by using the Big Six, we can knit it all together in one cohesive diagram. So today we're just going to look at one aspect, but this is part of a bigger plan that gives us an overview of the business. Now, we are going to use the AI capability in this tool. So we'll start by explaining our goal or objective over here. So we're interested in maximizing, or we'll say optimizing our cash flow. Okay, now I'm going to generate ideas. We're actually going to use that top header and force this to use a sub goal called a theme, which I'm going to add now. And that theme is going to be around optimizing cash flow. So I'm going to force this and say, I'll actually use one of the phrases. We optimize payment timing. No. We maintain consistent. Okay, let's go with that. We maintain consistent monthly flow. Now, I'm cheating a little bit. Normally, we use this tool to create the top level objectives, but I'm actually creating the next level objective using it. So we maintain consistent monthly cash flow throughout the year. Now, the KPI tree approach works best when you're focused on a particular organization and outcome. If you want generic, go to Google, go to ChatGPT, because it will spit out what everyone else is using. Where this works best is when you have a clear picture of what you're trying to achieve, and part of that is setting the context. So if you notice, I've chosen just an industry I've worked in: healthcare, veterinary practice, cash flow optimization. So industry, sector, and focus area. And you can give additional context. You can even show it a website of yours or of a competitor's, and it will suck the goodness out of that and use it for context as well. But in this case, I'm just focusing on healthcare, veterinary practice, and cash flow optimization. So let's start to break this down. Now, having told the AI what we're trying to do, we can hit this branch button, and using that, it will generate ideas for us. So let's hit that, and it will break it down, in this case, into 5 what we call tactical boxes. So these are next level outcomes. So let's see what we've got. We collect outstanding debts within 30 days of invoice. That sounds good. We maintain 3 months of operating expenses in reserve. Good. We spread major equipment purchases across financial quarters. We offer flexible payment plans to increase client retention. So that's going to have a negative impact probably on our cash flow, but it's an important part of a successful business. We diversify revenue streams beyond core veterinary services. I like that. I can't help but feel that there might be a few more. So let's add those and let's generate some more and see if it comes up with some interesting examples. So I'm going to hit the branch button again, go for another 5. See what it comes up with. Okay, we invoice clients promptly. Yep, that sounds important. We collect okay, I prefer that. We collect outstanding debts within agreed payment terms because it's not always going to be 30 days. We maintain optimal inventory levels to minimize cash tied up. Good. We schedule routine procedures evenly across each month. So that's about managing our cash generating activities. And we offer flexible payment plans. I think we've already got that, but I prefer the wording there. So I'm going to add those. There we go. And you can see we've got several. So I'm going to delete that because it's duplicate. 3 months of operating expenses in reserve. Okay. Now, there may be more. And this is an important point. I am not an expert in healthcare and veterinary practice. I've worked with some veterinary practice organizations, but I'm by no means an expert. In the real world, you will have experts in the room who are able to challenge and debate and argue and fine-tune this. The AI that I'm showing you is purely a support tool for when you're facilitating, for when everyone starts to look a bit blank or starts craving a coffee or whatever. It's a way of unsticking the process. The real magic comes from engaging your team, having the experts in the room and getting them to challenge. And in many ways, the AI is really just a kind of controversial viewpoint to get people talking. But for this, it's an unusual situation because, I'm sat here talking to a camera, so I'm having to do this solo. If you are involved in the sector, you're quite possibly shouting at the screen saying, no, he's wrong, or he's missed this. And that's good because that's when we start manually adding branches. So that little plus button there. and really sort of fleshing it out and finding interesting extra nooks and crannies to investigate. Now, what you'll notice is by the time we get down to this level, it's pretty clear what we need to measure. You may well be able to just come up with a KPI automatically, or off the top of your head, in which case you can add it manually. But what we're going to do is we are going to enroll the AI again. Whoops. We are going to enroll the AI again to come up with some ideas for us. And it's actually going to come up with two types of KPI. So let's hit the branch button, and you'll notice include widely used industry KPIs. Now, I've worked in lots of different sectors, and what you find is that in every industrial sector, every specialism, there are concepts that are fairly easy to grasp, but which have a very particular naming convention or a very particular form of word. So, for example, in paper making, you have something called basis weight. Now, that roughly is grams per square meter, how dense or how heavy a square meter of paper is. But everyone uses the phrase basis weight. It's just what we say, in the same way that you would say caliper instead of thickness. So for industry terms, leave this switched on, and the AI will suggest some commonly used industry KPIs in that space. It can get repetitive if we have multiple branches, so you may well see the same thing coming up multiple times as we go across, but that's okay. What we also will have are an equal number of suggestions that come from first principles, and this is where the AI reasons out what we should be measuring. Now, sometimes you will find that the AI duplicates the commonly used industry KPIs, but maybe phrases it in a more layman's sense, using more understandable language, but also language that wouldn't necessarily be recognized within that industry. So both of these have a role to play, and I'll show you what I mean as we go along. So we've selected, we maintain 3 months of operating expenses and reserves. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so these first 5 are widely used. So cash reserves to monthly operating expense ratio, that sounds good. Months of operating expenses in cash ratio. Now, this is long listing, so it could be that these two duplicate. I'm not really sure because I'm not a finance person. I'm not really a vet person. I'm going to put them both on, but during shortlisting we would debate, well, do these duplicate or do they tell us something slightly different from each other? Cash flow coverage ratio sounds interesting. Now, if you're interested, click on there and it will, in a few seconds, load a description telling you a bit more about the KPI. So if you're having that debate, then ask the AI. Right, measures a veterinary practice's ability to cover total debt payments, principal plus interest, using operating cash flow, calculate, and it gives you a calculation there. Okay, so you can look at those and have that debate as you go through. Okay, I've just managed to, there we go. Cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue, inventory turnover, these all look quite interesting. Monthly operating expense amount, that will be interesting. Operating expense reserves coverage. I'm going to pop all of these on. Now, with the right people in the room, you could rapidly whittle this down. Cash reserve balance, that's going to be important. Days of operating expenses covered by reserves. I like that because that makes sense to me as a layman. And reserve fund depletion rate, so that's our burn rate. I'm going to add them all in there, and you can see you've got them there. Now, you can just delete if you don't want something, and of course, undo it if you decide that you do want it, so it's back in there. Okay, so we've got 10 KPIs. I think that's overkill, but it gives us a good start point. Now, we spread major equipment purchases across financial quarters. Let's try this again. Okay. There we go. The Pixies are working hard to generate this. Sometimes it has to go out and look a bit more extensively. Okay, so spread major purchases across financial quarters. Operating expense ratio, I think we've already covered a lot of these. Right, number of majors. Okay, so it's actually the thinking KPIs that have come up with the useful insight here rather than the commonly used ones. So number of major equipment purchases made per financial quarter. But I'd actually be more interested in value there. Percentage of major equipment purchases are delayed to, okay, that will be interesting. So are we changing the way we run our business to improve our cash flow? Variance in quarterly cash outflow for major equipment purchases compared with target. So are we over or underspending? Average time between major equipment purchase requests and actual procurement. So are we impairing our business performance buying the right kit to improve our cash flow? And percentage of quarters where major equipment. Okay, those are okay. I'm actually going to ask it again and see if it will come up with some more ideas. So okay, we're on 10. I'm going to turn off the widely used industry KPIs because I don't think it's helping here. It's because we're being quite specific. Let's see what we come up with. Okay, quarterly capital expenditure variance, major equipment purchases per quarter, cash flow smoothness index across quarters. So how much variance are we seeing? That's quite an interesting one, actually. Are we having a white knuckle ride with our cash flow, or are we quite smooth and steady? Equipment purchases, timing adhering to schedule, quarters with 0 major equipment purchases, average days between purchases, equipment expenditure concentration, planned versus actual equipment purchases timing, that would be interested, and capital expenditure seasonal variation coefficient. Okay, and I would add one more on here, which is just how much did we spend on capital purchases. So capital, I'm just going to use voice for this, capital purchase spend. Okay, and that would be dollars or whatever currency we have. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out a bit and just show you one neat feature here. It's not too bad here, but you can use this tool. Let's zoom out a little bit more. You can use this tool to spread your boxes evenly and just tidy things up. So it's great for keeping on top of it. Okay, so next we offer flexible payment plans to increase client retention. This one should be interesting. Okay, let's hit generate ideas. Oh, actually I've got industry KPIs turned off. So let's clear that. I'm just going to rerun it. Generate ideas. Let's see what we come up with. Okay, so client retention rate, that's going to be interesting because if we don't offer flexible payment, we would expect that to go down. If we do offer it, we would expect it to go up. So this is one of the positive outcomes. Average client transaction value, that's going to be useful to understand whether we need to offer it. Revenue per client, cash flow, wellness plan renewal percentage. Right, yeah, that's really interesting. Lots of veterinary practices offer different kind of payment plans and insurance plans and whatever. So I think that's going to be part of the mix. Right, client retention rate for those using flexible payment plans. That would be very meaningful because the question would be, does offering it at risk to ourselves improve our performance as a business? Average payment plan completion rate, outstanding aged debt over 90 days, monthly cash flow collection efficiency. These all look good. Number of clients enrolling in flexible payment plans per month. Right, let's add those. Now, just worth mentioning, with KPI trees, where something has an adverse effect on the thing that it's connected to, we use a red connector. So I've just made that a red connector there. And what you can do sometimes to make it a little bit clearer that it is red, because it's sort of hidden by the black, we will perhaps connect it separately to the tree. So it makes it obvious that the connector is separate and is adverse. It's having a negative impact on the thing it's connected to. Right, let's work through a few more of these. Okay, so we diversify revenue streams beyond core veterinary services. Now, that might be an important business thing. I don't think that's really around cash flow as such, so I'm going to take that out. We invoice clients promptly. nothing like asking people for money to get money coming in. If you don't invoice, you can't bring the cash in. So let's see what we come up with for that one. Okay, right. So average. Okay, so again, the widely used, not super useful. The AI thinking KPI is much more useful. So average time between service completion and invoice generation. That's got to be one of the key ones. Percentage of invoices generated within 24 hours, maybe, if that was our goal. Number of invoices sent on the same day. Now, yeah, that's pretty much a duplicate. I'm going to go with 24 hours because, I mean, it's a business decision which one you go with. Proportion of veterinary consultations invoiced within 1 working day. Now, that's a bit repetitive. Average delay between treatment completion and billing system entry. Okay, so that's important. There are a few steps in the billing process. Firstly, we deliver the treatment, then it goes on the system, then we invoice. And if we just measure the time between it going on the system and invoicing, we are potentially missing out part of the puzzle. Okay, so we've got 3 KPIs on there. Let's have a look. We collect outstanding debt within agreed payment terms. Now, we do have some measures on this already, so we may end up with some repetition, but let's see what the system comes up with. Okay. Use the AI branch builder. Now, whilst it's working, something that's popped into my head is we need to think about discounts as well. So how often are discounts being offered? What are their value? Because that will have a direct impact on both cash flow and profitability. So I'm going to add that in on the tactical level in a moment. So let's take a look at what this is going to come up with. Okay, here we go. So receivables turnover ratio, debtor days, days sales outstanding, average debtor outstanding monetary value, accounts receivable turnover ratio. Now, this is where the widely used KPIs really come into their own. Because this is standard stuff, we can see a list there, and if you want to find out more about them, you can click on the little button and it will tell you more about it. One of our plans for KPI Tree Studio is to actually build in a definition module so that once you've chosen your KPIs, it will help you build that definition. You can see the foundations are already in there. Okay, so let's just go back to that. Let's add those 5 to the tree, and we can move on now to maintain optimum inventory levels to minimize cash tied up. So if you're in a business like veterinary medicine, you've got drugs, you've got surgical goods that you need to stock, some of which will be pretty expensive. So maintaining the right stock levels so that you have what you need from a clinical point of view, but you don't have too much cash tied up, is going to be really important. So let's have a look. Average inventory value, pharmacy inventory turnover rate, drug cost percentage, I'm not sure about that, but we'll put it in. Day sales outstanding in inventory turnover rate. Okay, percentage of slow moving stock items. Now, you might want to do that by value as well. Stock out incidents, that's going to be important. And cash conversion cycle duration. Yeah, let's add all of those in. And again, we can sit down with the bean counters and work through that. Before I forget, I'm just going to add in discounts. So we'll come back to it, but before I forget, so I've just added a new tactical branch over here. Okay. Oh, I'm having mouse trouble. Okay. We use discounting in an effective way. Now, I might tinker with the wording, and I'll show you how this tool can help you with that in a moment. So we schedule routine procedures evenly across every month, so we don't do everything all at one point in the month. Let's hit the AI button and see what it comes up with. Okay, so revenue per veterinarian, no, that's more around sort of doctor performance. Appointment utilization rate, maybe. Cost of goods sold, inventory, no, those aren't particularly helpful. Right, monthly variance in procedure bookings, not really sure. Average daily routine procedures scheduled per month. Okay, standard deviation of weekly routine. That is actually meaningful. So are we having busy weeks and quiet weeks? Percentage of routine procedures scheduled in the first half versus the second half. Okay, maybe. Monthly cash flow volatility. You know what? I'm not super happy with these. Let's try the reword tool. So when we hit this, it's going to reword it or offer us 3 options for rewording it. And it might be that it teases out some better KPIs. Right. Okay. Right. So I think what we're missing is to optimize cash flow predictability. Let's try that. So cash flow predictability. Bit of repetition there, but it will emphasize to the AI that we're serious. Okay, maintain steady monthly revenue through optimized procedure scheduling. Right. I'm just having a look at these. So maintain steady monthly revenue through optimized procedure scheduling. Good. Achieve consistent cash flow through balanced monthly procedure distribution. I think that's a bit better. Stabilize practice income by... They all do the job. I'm going to go for the middle one. So we're going to rerun the AI suggestions on that and see what it comes up with. Okay, right. These top 5 ones are all pretty generic, but once again, the thinking ones should give us... Right. Okay. No, again, they're talking monthly. What we want to do is we want to think about weekly and daily levels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these in, but I'm going to tweak them to talk about daily. Okay, we're going to go daily procedure revenue variance. Now, interestingly, this will tie in with the capacity utilization. So, for example, if you have an expensive MRI or CT scanning machine, you're going to want to use that and you're going to want to keep it full and busy all month. So this actually will tie in with your operational considerations as well. Let's go daily cash flow receipt. Actually, that one's a more general one. We're going to take that out. Although, actually, you know what? I think that is one of our sort of top level KPIs. Sometimes you have KPIs that directly tell you how you're doing at your top level, and I think that's one of them. You know, it's easy to overlook the basics here. So I'm going to connect that up to there and move that KPI over there. So there we have a cash measure that directly relates to what we're interested there. Okay. So next, okay. So we've got our basics there. Daily procedure revenue variance, number of procedures performed. No, we don't really need that. That's more of an operational measure. Monthly revenue volatility coefficient. I would also duplicate that and have a daily one as well. So yeah, let's add a new one in there and have, well, I tell you what, we'll call it monthly, weekly / daily. That's really 3 KPIs. We're cheating a bit there, but I think we'll let ourselves off because it's really about how we segment a particular KPI. Okay, so we've got 3 there. We might want to come back to that. Next, we offer flexible payment plans for expensive treatments. Okay, we've already got that. So we can delete that. Oops. That's fine. Sometimes you do get a bit of repetition. We're going to do some work on that, but better too much than too little. And we use discounting in an effective way. So I've just popped that down as a mind dump, but let's see if we can come up with something better. So regenerate. Oh, actually, I'm going to remove the reference to cash flow. Okay. Pricing strategies, enhance veterinary... Right, I'm going to regenerate those because discounting has an impact on both cash flow and profitability. So this will be one that we might well link to a profitability branch of the tree as well. Okay. Right. Okay. I'm going to make this more explicit. Minimize cash losses through careful management of discounting. Okay. So we've given it a bit more intent there. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, maximize revenue through strategic pricing decisions. Okay, that sounds good, because that is actually it's not just about discounting, it's about pricing overall. So this may well link into the pricing branch of a practice KPI tree as well. So we'll hit generate ideas and see what it comes up with. Because it's so broad, there may be some that aren't strictly relevant to cash, but they could still be useful for our tree. Okay, revenue, those are all pretty standard. Right, okay, that's an interesting one. Percentage of clients accepting recommended treatment plan. Yeah. Okay, so this is one of those situations where we've probably gone a bit too broad, so I'm going to reword it and make it through strategic use of discounting and forgiveness. So forgiveness, it's a term that's used in banking. I'm not entirely sure if it's used in veterinary practices, but it's where you basically write something off. And there will be some situations where you just can't get the money. So it's a bit like bad debt, but there may be different criterias for coming up with it. Increase practice revenue through compassionate pricing strategies. Okay, I like that. Optimize financial outcomes while supporting pet owners' needs. Maximize, okay, right. Maximize practice profitability through thoughtful payment flexibility. Okay, we'll apply that and see what we come up with. Again, it might be a little bit cryptic for the AI, but we'll give it a try. So we'll hit the branch builder, generate some ideas. Okay, again, the widely used ones are quite generic, but okay, payment plan uptake rate, okay. Average days payment, right, we've already, okay, bad debt write-offs proportion to total revenue, client retention, we've already got that. So actually, I think we're going to do this manually. So we're going to have average percentage discount offered by doctor. Okay, and we're going to have bad debt rate for discounted invoices. Hit the wrong button. Bad debt rate for discounted invoices. Okay, and I think we'll have the total figure in there as well. Total value of invoice discounts offered in practice. Okay, great. Right, so we've got our basics there. So let's take a step back and see what we've got. So in the space of 35 minutes, we have come up with, let me just make this a bit smaller, 50%. So we can see it all. Right, we have come up with 49 KPIs. Now, I am not suggesting that we measure all 49 of those KPIs, but what we have here is the raw material for shortlisting. So our next step would be to dig into these with our group and say, okay, which of these are meaningful, which ones are meaningful but we can't measure, and which ones, frankly, aren't that important. And you can see the value of this is you can link every single one of these KPIs to an outcome. So it could be around outstanding debt management, which links to maintaining consistent monthly cash flow, which links to staying solvent. So we've got a really powerful start point here. It's just one of the links in the ROCKS method, but it's visual, it's rapid, it's collaborative, and best of all, if things change, if we change our focus, if there's a strategic shift, you've got a really good starting point. It's actually very quick and easy to modify the tree to take into account a change in strategy or a change in ownership or a change in the business dynamic. So you've got something that's a flexible live tool that's easy to explain, easy to share, and easy for people to participate in. Okay, so let's just head back to PowerPoint and take a look and see where we are in the process. So we've covered today the strategy and the KPI tree side of things. As I said, there are lots of things that go around this. And if you are looking for help or guidance on that, there are 3 options to find out more. So firstly, if you really want to get into how to build KPI trees, the ROCKS method, so the 7-step method, and also lots of useful tools like index KPIs, target design, how to measure the impossible and so on, then our KPI Black Belt is for you. We've got a cohort coming up in February. It's a small group with live tutorials and assignments and personal feedback, and it is the best way to really get to grips with performance measurement. If you're a consultant, perhaps a BI consultant, and you have clients who need guiding, it's the best way to acquire those skills. If you want hands-on help from me to walk you through a process just like today, you and your team, then kpisprint.com. The KPI strategy sprint is the way to go. And in a few short sessions, we can take you from a bit of strategic ambiguity through to clarity, through to a short list of very carefully considered KPIs that you know have a cast iron link with your strategic objectives and your strategic plan. And finally, if you are interested in building trees using the tool that I've just shared with you, it's a hugely powerful tool that we trained on hundreds of KPI trees, in which I've personally curated the AI and the design of. And there is an amazing deal because we just launched it and we are really keen to get people on the platform. It is a lifetime deal. Now, normally the lifetime deal is $799. Just for the next few days, we are offering a discount of 50% on that. So you can get access to the tool forever for $399, and we will throw in the Excel Brilliant Dashboard Kit, which normally sells for $399 on its own, and that is included. So you will get both of those things to use forever for $399. However, this offer expires at midnight this coming Saturday. So head to KPI Tree Studio, kpitree.studio/launch, and take advantage of this offer whilst you can. It's not going to be around for very long. And in fact, I think I may not offer the lifetime deal at all pretty soon. So this is your one-time chance to take advantage of this offer. So that's our second session. Thank you so much for joining. Do tune in tomorrow if you're interested in our third and final session this week. Thanks a lot for coming.